Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 100. So we have been talking about episode 100 for a while. We've been counting it down. And as I said last time on the podcast, we have a big guest with us for episode 100. He's also today going to be the most regular guest that we have had on, because this is I won't even try and disguise who it is, because I mentioned it last week. We have Dan John with us. Hello, Dan. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. And I think I speak for most of your listeners. The fact that I'm not on every time is a gap in what you're trying to accomplish here. I think it's pretty clear that what your listeners need is more me, and I feel for them as we go through this. Yeah.
Okay. So what I will do before we delve into a conversation, I'll say hello to the usual hosts. Hello, Mr. Peter Lance.
Hello. I was expecting some sort of fanfare for the 100th episode there, but obviously nobody.
Maybe you could edit that in afterwards.
Nobody got that memo, did they? Or we didn't bother sending it out. But
no, that could be put in post-production, Pete.
Speaking of fanfares, I've got all that going on this weekend. We've got where I train my guys in the park behind my house. Sorry, my dog's barking. Where I train the guys in the park behind my house, Michael Bublé is doing a concert there. He's doing 2 nights. Friday and Saturday night. James is nodding, going, "Yeah, lovely. I'm gonna have to." It's literally about 200 meters from my back door, so I'm gonna have to listen to it for 2 nights. And I'm not really a Michael Bublé fan, so I've been saying, and I'll put it on here as well to Bath Council. You need to balance it out and get like Slipknot to do a couple of nights as well, and I'll happily sit and listen to that.
Or just get a nice beer or a glass of wine or something and sit out there and just listen to it.
It's hilarious. Loads of people are paying like £200 a ticket, and I can sit and listen to it in the back garden.
Honestly, I would much rather be in your back garden than in I'm not a big fan of concerts. I don't like the crowds. I mean, no, it's not. Crowds are fine. I get it. At concerts, I don't like it because the person behind me always thinks they can sing along. And that's not always.
There's one of my guys who's he's 6'7", big guy, and whenever he's at a gig or a festival or anything, he becomes a beacon. So someone will be on the phone to the mate going, "All right," trying to tell them where they are in the crowd. They go, "You see that big fellow with the beard?" So they go, walk towards him, and he hates it.
That's great.
And Mr. Paul Bassett, how are you doing?
I'm okay. I think Dan's got a similar attendance to me on this podcast recently. I've got that same percentage of attendance. No, I mean, with 100 episodes, there's one of two things that will happen, really. Is it we'll either have a midlife crisis and go crazy and burn everything down, or now we're the elder statesmen of the podcast world. I'm not sure which one. Do we have a newfound maturity, or do we just throw that out the window and just, have a one-night stand and go crazy and do drugs? Which one is it? Silence.
I love your options here. So thermonuclear war, or whatever. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that's what happens, isn't it?
We have Dan with us, who's
moving on.
Who's recently passed the 150 episode podcast on his own podcast. So a man of immense experience with podcasts as well. So maybe we get some advice from Dan as we go. And just before we start, I would always say, if you are a new listener to the podcast and you have not listened to the previous episodes with Dan John, I would highly recommend you go back and listen to episode 21, episode 23, episode 31, and episode 50, which were Dan's previous podcasts. And we've gone through the Star Wars trilogy, the middle trilogy. We ignore the prequels and the recent ones. And now we are on the Indiana Jones trilogy. We had Raiders of the Lost Ark. This one is Temple of Doom. So we're going to probably ignore, as I think Dan has said before, we'll ignore the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull as well. We won't have that one with
the monkeys.
we can pick and choose. Oh.
And then what we're going to do?
Poltergeist.
There's a poltergeist in Dan's house. Look, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was
Then what we can do is we can be ambitious and do like Frasier episodes, because there's like 11 seasons of 20 episodes or something, isn't there? We could go big.
I think I'm going mad. I saw something on YouTube about Frasier being remade. They're doing a reboot of Frasier with the original cast, but it looked like a horror movie.
Yeah, I've seen that. It looks weird.
Is that real? Is that something that's real?
I've no idea.
Not heard about that one.
It's very meta.
Yeah, not heard about that one. So we have Mr. Dan John with us, all the way from Utah in the United States, and we'll be just having a kind of a general conversation, a bit of a catch up with Dan before we started recording. There's a few kind of questions and angles that I'd like to explore a little bit, but with always with these podcasts, we don't like to prescribe and to be too well planned. So Dan, how's life treating you at the moment? What are you up to? I know you've recently been over to the UK again. And we missed you, unfortunately, this last time you were here, but I'm sure we'll catch up again soon. But I think you're off traveling again soon, aren't you? I think we've managed to catch you in between traveling appointments or something. So yeah, what's going on with you at the moment?
Well, my personal life is much more settled than we talked last summer. There's still lots of sadness in my life in certain areas, but one thing I would like to say is yesterday was my mother's. She's no longer with us, but it would have been her 100th birthday, and I wrote something yesterday, and I think it's important. I'd like to begin with this: is that my mom has been dead for 2/3 of my life, and it's one of those things that I'm trying to talk to my daughters about, trying to talk to people about just and yet it's a rare day goes by that I don't think about my mother and my father. And I think there's so much of my vision of what I'm trying to do in training and nutrition and recovery is I want to dance at my granddaughter Josephine's wedding. I was with her last night, and she's an interest, she's a little girl, and and I think that sometimes if you have a serious discussion sometimes about longevity, it talking about longevity clarifies so many of the other issues we have. And this is called the Health Oddity podcast. Well, health is one of those pillars that leads to longevity, and so one of the things I'm trying to do, I have a new book coming out very soon called the Easy Strength Omni Book. I'm at 350 pages in a Word document. Now that doesn't include introduction, doesn't include index, it doesn't include preface, it doesn't include the legal stuff. It doesn't. So, I mean, my thought is, the book will be, you just pick the book up and that's your workout. Just carrying the book is all you need for your workout. Just put it in a backpack and, but when I think about, somebody asked me what I'm going to do after, and I'm like, well, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to do something else that gets me out of bed in the morning. I'm going to find other things that makes me, pop up and get going, because to me, that's where I want to be. So let's just make sure gentle listeners are following what I'm saying. I've gone through a lot of personal issues in the last couple of years. I have, but at the same time, I'm trying to build my systems up so that I'm around here another 20 years or so at least. It is strange, I do have. So I've had to do all that legal stuff that happens when you turn 65 and all those little things. And it's like, and I tell you, when you're filling out your Medicare card, your Social Security information, there is a boom, 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 boom. There is a drum beat that you have more yesterdays than tomorrows. And every time you fill out one of those forms, on the form it says, you are going to die sooner than you think. Oh, okay. Thank you, sir. Check, to check the box. But what it's also done for me is to be completely honest, it's unpacked for me these things I want to make sure I take care of. Fortunately, because of my career, I've seen the places I wanted to see on the planet Earth. Fortunately, because of my career, I've had experiences that I cherish, and now I'm in a place where I really want to make sure I leave the lessons I've learned in strength and conditioning and leave them in a place that's easy to be found versus on this bizarre little computer I'm talking to right now. So life is good. I competed while I was there at St. Mary's. My lifts weren't what I wanted them to be, but that's okay. I came home and my coach yelled at me for not taking a lighter third attempt in the snatch and instead I tried to go really heavy. And so Dave and I had an interesting conversation. I'm in a quiet time training right now after I lifted a meet. So I think you should train up to a competition and then after be real smart after, so general bodybuilding, general mobility work, go for longer walks, less rucking, more walking. Does that make sense? Turn the engine down a little bit, more saunas, more meditations. And then when I find a meet on the horizon, I'll start cranking it back up. I'm a big believer I believe in my favorite way to train people is seasonally, fall, winter, spring, summer, but that doesn't always work perfectly. But I still think there's a time to rise up. And then after you do something and it doesn't have to be a weightlifting meet, gentle listener. It can be a 5K fundraising walk. And then after that, ease up, turn the engine down a little bit, and then rise back up. I think one of the mistakes we make in our field, and I think it really comes from the people who push body composition. Interesting. I'll be a little snarky here if you don't mind, but there's a guy who always posts his pictures online. He's always ripped and he's always this and he's got the shit. I mean, sorry, he's got
Yes, sorry about that.
Yeah, which please. He's always shaved. He's always, well, I get down to this workshop and I meet this guy, and he's also a thief he's an information thief. He pretends like he's invented stuff. He never references anybody else's work, which drives me crazy. And if you know my work, you know that I'm constantly reflecting others. Well, he's the color of my computer. He's ashen. He's in real life. He's ashen. He's gray. He looks, that weird bloated look that the guys who use those GHs and stuff have, and he doesn't look very good. And I thought to myself, but he's one of those guys online who's always saying you should. He's always doing. He must have gotten 300,000 pictures taken on one day, and he shares them every single day. And that's and I worry about that social media, that I think they're called influencers. They're taking over our industry, and it's this idea that you always have to look bikini beach ready every single day. And if you don't flash 8-pack abs, and if you can't see every vein, and you're not shredded, ripped, and I feel bad for the females because they have to be buxom and shredded at the same time, which we know is not possible. And the guys, and I'm trying to tell people is that life waves in and out. Life has seasons. Life is cyclical. And the idea is train up, ease off, train up, ease off, and have a life. If Michael Bublé is playing 200 meters from your home, you sit in your backyard with a Chardonnay and you enjoy the concert. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. Eager.
I actually saw Michael Bublé live at the O2. I paid good money for that, Pete, and it was brilliant. It was really, really good. So yeah, I think take Dan's advice. Sit in the
will do. The people at Bath might not agree though, because he has shut down the entire park for 2 weeks. Anyway, that's by the by.
So yeah, I think what you're saying, Dan, and I think again, I find myself reflecting a lot, and I'm 44 this year. And my father sort of passed away a couple of years ago, and I've got 2 children now, and you can't help but kind of reflect on life and the whole package of life, can you? And the way that training it's a part of life, but it's not life, is it? And some people who run away with the idea that you know, life is for training and training is for life, and that's all there is to life. I think you know, one of the quotes that I remember you saying years and years ago was, you know, if you've got, you know, an incredible body or something, but your kids hate you, then you've got to question, you know, where you've been spending your life and your priorities and all the rest of it. So I think that, and certainly from your perspective now in your 60s, reflecting on things, like you say, it's life's finite, isn't it? And you know, you can get bogged down in thinking about things quite heavily, but the days do keep passing, and it's how you choose to spend that time, isn't it?
Did you see the post that Coach Fury put up yesterday? So friend of the show, Steve Holliner.
Yes.
Yeah. He's in Brooklyn, and he runs the Speakeasy of Strength, a little studio in Brooklyn.
Great.
And he's got he says like it's an inclusive gym. So, and he was talking about how Instagram's full of, like, you know, these ripped
What's
people.
an inclusive gym?
Well, as in, like, you know, it's as in the people who go there don't have to necessarily get in shape. They just go along and work out and do things. There's no body image or anything like that.
It's a very positive place. Yeah, he's very good. Yeah.
So he took his top off. He's 50 this year. He took his top off and he's got a bit soft. He's a bit flabby, you know, and he's like, this is not really necessarily what Instagram wants and all that. But then he said he had 2 40-kilo bells. He just cleaned them up, pressed them above his head, put them back down. And he said, I can still do that. So my strength is there. So the fact that I don't look the part doesn't matter. And he goes, that's what this gym's about. And that's what Instagram should be about and all of that. And it was just a really honest post. And he said it was really uncomfortable for him to do, but I thought it was great. And it's one of those things about, like, you know, you can be healthy without having a six-pack. I mean, even in fact, having a six-pack probably isn't necessarily that healthy if you're that.
Really not practical most of the time.
Yeah,
I mean, whenever I have to do it, it's just so much work. It just becomes the main goal.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's never that fun, you know.
And maybe there's a reason to do that. I mean, for example, there might be a wedding, a reunion, a thing where you want to look your best because of, you know, it's going to be one of those, you know, line in the sand, a lot of photo. And again, at a wedding, if someone's showing off their 6-pack abs, we have to have another conversation.
You know, what kind of wedding?
The suit. You got. Who's your tailor?
I've got a question though. So, because obviously you're 65 now, I think you just said, you're coming up to that. Which is the same age as so my dad died when he was 65 in 2004. So he's been gone for nearly 40% of my life. So I've never thought of it like that before. But I'm going to be 46 this year. When you were 20 years ago, were you thinking like this when your kids were young?
Yes.
Right.
But don't forget, the best year of my athletic career was age 47.
Yeah.
At 47 was the best year of my discus throwing career. It was, you know, of course I was. Now, I did a lot of smart things. One is, you know, I wasn't a big, I'm not a fan of PEDs. I'm not, and so I progressed, you know, when you stand back, it looks like this. When you get close, it was, you know, but at 47, that's when I was training easy strength and loaded carries. That's when I first really brought those into the forefront. Remember, I mean, and you guys can say, I mean, you can say anything you want online and it's all bullshit, but I invented the goblet squat. I'm the one who pushed loaded carries. I invented the suitcase carry, the waiter walk. So many of the things that people think are normal in 2022 weren't around 20 years ago. You know, I was and I'm not, okay, I can't reach back well to pat my own back as well as okay, there, I got it. I nailed it.
You need to do more yoga.
You know, having my daughters, basically I made my daughters breakfast and dinner every night. I drove them to school, I drove them home. You know, laundry, I did, you know, I was working basically 2 careers 20 years ago. I was a professor and administrator at the same time. I mean, I had systems in place that it was easy to do all this. And I was trying to train at an elite level. Other than that, you know, I wasn't busy at all. Hard to stop. So I had to be smarter about how I trained. I couldn't train like I always did. And honestly, the smartest thing I did was I asked people from the early 60s how they trained before PEDs. And Glenn Passy, who just died about 2 years ago, wonderful man, he gave me some insights, some other people. And basically what I started to do was realize that, can you do farmer walks for 2.5 hours? I mean, can you do a 2.5 hour farmer walk workout? But you can go on machines and bomb and blitz for 2.5 hours. You can do a half hour of crap cardio on a crap cardio machine, and then you can walk around and bomb and blitz for 2.5 hours. But here's the thing: after you did that 2.5 hours of your machine-based training, and you feel like you were a world champion, truth is, when you go to the discus ring, you're not going to throw farther. But if you do 200 meters of loaded carries with, I don't know, 50, 60 kilos per hand. I mean, when you put those weights down, it only took you, 8 or 9 minutes, but your body just goes boom, boom, and expands. So easy strength is something that helped me a lot, because there was those 12, 15-minute workouts, farmer carries. So what helped me the most, and I don't want to go, but Peter, what helped me the most was my life was so busy, but I still had these goals. I was able to, and the nice thing is now, I think, when you look at the body of work I've written since then, you can see that so much of it is based on those basic insights.
If you want to get something done, you give it to a busy person. It's the same with training. Some of the most successful clients I've had are CEOs or people with senior positions. They have very little time, but they just budget that time really wisely, and then they know how to spend it.
Right. There's that. I still think the most important book, and it's a British author, C. Northcote Parkinson, who wrote Parkinson's Law. It was in the 1950s. Hilarious book.
Yeah.
It is just, as every page is funnier than the page before. And basically, that was Paul who said that, right, Paul? That exactly right. There's a great chapter in there where they ask a very busy professional man to write a thank you note, and honestly, he dashes it off in 12 seconds. Versus, I can't remember what her name is, but it's like Lady Pennyworth or something like that, who has to find the exact right thank you note with the exact right lace and doesn't know which pen to write it. And that is exactly what happened. And that's why, when you go online and these influencers are 21, 22, and they're telling us how to be in great shape. Dude, if you're 22 years old and you're not in great shape, well, you're just an idiot. I mean, you are. I mean, how can you not be in great shape? Now, you can by drinking a lot of beer and being an idiot in your teenage years. But honestly, if you just show up at 21, you're going to look pretty good. I just listened to something very interesting about, it was a commencement speech where, and the person talks about one of his good friends. She says she looked at a picture of her graduating from college, and she always felt that she was fat and ugly. And she looked at that picture and she goes, I was gorgeous. And I think sometimes we need to, and I'll be honest with you, my concern with these influencers, like there's that group of sisters, their actual father hid evidence at a very famous murder case here in the United States. I believe he was a former American football player. And that evidence would have convicted
Hang on,
him.
I've just got to go and get a glass of juice.
That's of course their stepfather competed against me in the discus. Well,
I've just got that.
And and this set of sisters has more influence on fitness and health than I ever will. And all I'm trying to tell you is that, you can do, obviously my face this is a face built on sports. I've broken my nose 6 times. You can, if you look close, you can see the attempts to fix all the surgeries. Can you see all the scars, all the stitch marks up there? This is a face built by surgery, and this is a body built by sports and surgeries, and this is a lifestyle based on, my first trophy is from 1967. I've been competing a long time. I've been there, done that with everything. I've had the ups and downs of life. Frank Sinatra sings songs about me. Riding High in April, shot down in May. And yet, these 20-something Instagrammers, they'll say, I drink mushroom tea, and mushroom tea sales go through the roof. Yeah, I guess that was a kind of a douchey series of comments, but it is frustrating. And yet,
so that book you mentioned by Parkinson, is that where Parkinson's law comes from? Is it?
Yeah.
Is that right. I've not read that. I thought it was some like scientific experiment or something like that. I didn't realize.
Oh my God, Parkinson's law! If you can get a copy,
I'm going to look for that. That's because what is it? It's the task will always expand to fit the time, right? That's the principle, yeah.
And the larger the larger the office, the less work you do.
Yeah. I used to work in a big office.
Everything. And the thing is, if you get a chance, the British system of hiring versus the Chinese system is, in my short amount of time in England, I still kind of laugh about how things get hired and how things get done, because Parkinson's law is alive and well at a certain university I work at, and I'm not going to say which one it is, but yes.
Okay. And Dan, we mentioned, or a couple of weeks back, we were talking, you've obviously mentioned just there about your competitive career, starting in, I think you said 1965, and still obviously competing today. We had a question a couple of weeks ago where we talked about the importance of competition, or the role of competition in people's lives, and team competition and individual competition, and whether there was a correct time to stop competing, or if there is a time to stop competing. And I just wondered if I could maybe ask you about your views on, obviously competition for you has been a major part of your life. And
you can do it in other ways, James. Up behind me, and by the way, those of you who saw the Poltergeist, the Ghost earlier, and knocked those books down. But on this list here, this is all the Clarence Bass books. He's that ripped, and I really like Clarence Bass's books. I don't, now, in total candor, I mean, there's no way I could train the way he trains or eat. He eats the exact same meal every single day for 60 years. That's a little tough for me. Clarence Bass has an idea that you should do an annual photo shoot. Now, so an annual photo shoot could also be getting ready for a wedding. You could say, every June, I'm going to look my best for the first day of, wedding season, or the beach, or whatever. There's other ways to do it. This isn't at all planned, but this is a classic book. This is Millie Brown's book, Low Stress Fitness. And she is a triathlete who's not very good. And one of my favorite things about her work and some other work is that she says her triathlons are float, coast, shuffle. And the idea is that that's like those, I call them bagel 5Ks, those community runs that you're raising funds for the animal shelter, the dog shelter, the cat shelter. And it's a 5K. And everyone does their 5K. It takes 45 minutes for people to do the 5K. And by the way, if it takes you 45 minutes to do a 5K, you're probably not running the 5K. And at the end, you eat this bagel, which has more calories than you burned in that 5K.
There's a guy I know who cycles, and he said he went out with his mate, right? His mate was quite a big guy. He got a new bike and all that, and they were like, "Can I come out cycling with you?" So he was, yeah. So this guy used to go quite a long distance. His mate came with him. They got 15 minutes into the ride, And he had to turn around and go home. He was like, I'm tired. So they went back home, and his wife had put out a massive spread for them, and she was like, oh, you deserve this. You've earned it. He was like, we've only been out for 15 minutes.
15-minute bike ride, and you need that. Yeah. But so James, though I compete on a platform, I mean, I throw weights over my head, or I was coming back. And then of course, when COVID hit, is my goal was to come back as a discus thrower. But when COVID hit, it just got really, and the problem with track meets is that they're long, they're hot. I have strong opinions on masters athletics. Frankly, it drives me crazy. I still lift in open weightlifting meets because I can't stand masters events. Because
Why is that?
You ever been at a masters event?
No, well, I probably class as one now.
So like in the discus throw, you'll get there and some guy will run over and says, hey, can I throw the discus? And you'll pick up and throw the discus 1 meter and then run back to the other event he did. And or they talk to each other while they're in the ring throwing. It's either as serious as the Olympic final or just a kumbaya. And I think it should be somewhere. You either have the officials saying you can't wear those shoes because it has a brand on them. Literally happened to a friend of mine in a weightlifting meet, track meet, that's only happens at the Olympics. It's either one step up from a free for all, or it's so, and it should be somewhere a little bit more in the middle. I think if you're throwing at a masters meet, you should know how to throw the implement. You should know what the implement is called, and you should take it a little bit seriously. And I've had my fill of that nonsense. Olympic lifting, you don't see people screwing around when they're throwing weights over their head.
Mm. Yeah, so if someone's turned up to an Olympic lifting meet, they've trained, they know the techniques. They're probably a lifelong. Well, not necessarily. We were talking as well about physical age versus training age, whereby you can start something fairly late in life and have quite a steep learning curve, can't you? And a progress curve.
Oh yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, so I suppose, but yeah, like you say, you don't turn up to an Olympic lifting meet.
Hey, let me try this. Here, how much weight's on the bar? It's 170 kilos. Ooh, let me snatch that. Yeah, go right ahead. You jump in there at 170 for the first time. Yeah, get your hands a little wider though. Yeah, you'll make it easy. Yeah, you got that.
I think sometimes though with like certain events, it's just like people don't actually have any comprehension of what it takes to do. They don't even have a point of reference, I think. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of it, what's the difference between one that's got 4 plates on or one that's got 3 plates on? What's a lot of some of these sports, you have to kind of understand the whole, you have to have experienced it in some way to actually understand the magnitude of the ability that someone can do it, like when I see the people in kettlebell sport, when I see people, even when you see sprinters in the Olympics, you think, oh yeah, they run fast, don't they? And then you see exactly what it looks like with an athlete against a normal person, the magnitude of it and the training volume and things like that.
What an interesting show. That might make an interesting little show, is have somebody, and there's all those, I got to be careful. There are people in our field who like to just show up and do things, and it is hard sometimes to, I don't want to make it's called the workout that shall not be named, but you know who I'm talking about. They used to show up at events. And in fact, here in Utah, a lot of the Olympic lifters are from the gyms from the workout that shall not be named. And they get okay, but they never get great. And they just show, and I'm going to go do the workout of the day, and then I'm going to do kettlebell cert, and then I'm going to do, but they never actually break through to that. There's that early learning curve, and then there's that plateau. And by the way, this is from the book Mastery. But everybody loves that early learning curve. And by the way, it's that way in relationships. It's that way in every business when you first show up, and then there's that plateau. In the book Mastery talks about you have to learn to fall in love with the plateau, because it took, In 1977, I snatched almost 130 kilos. Okay. So 1977, did I say that right?
Yeah.
In 1991, I finally broke through to 142.5. From 1977 to 1991, I flattened out in my snatch. Do you hear those numbers? Isn't that like 14 years? And the thing is, what most people do, of course, is, and this is such a great thing about this book, is that most people then just either they try to force their way up to this next thing. That's anabolics, that's, ephedrine, speed, whatever. That's, we're going to go, in relationships, when you're on the plateau, let's go to this thing. Let's have this intense thing. Let's make or what happens with most people is, and I'm guarantee you guys have friends like this, because I do, is you go into their garage and you find a whole bunch of tennis equipment.
Mm.
You find a whole bunch of handball equipment. You find a whole bunch of skis. You find a whole bunch, and they go from a high-tech bicycle. You see, you see kettlebells in the corner that are rusted. You see Olympic
clubs, yeah.
I've got the book here. You recommended this book on the podcast or something ages ago, and I went and bought it. And unlike lots of other books that have been recommended, it wasn't like 150 quid or anything like that. It was actually.
Show me the book. Show me the book.
But it's yeah.
It's such a good book, isn't it?
And so you're talking about. I was going to talk about what you're just talking about now: the dabbler, the obsessive, and the hacker. That's what they talk about. So people who dabble in stuff, which is what you just said, and then the obsessive who buys all the equipment and all that and still gives up, and they've got the actual curve. Oh, you'll not be able to see it because of my thing, but the curve.
Oh yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Isn't it a good book?
Okay. It's a brilliant book. It's a brilliant book. I love it.
I every week I sit down with my client list and I go through what I call high risk clients, the ones that I know have just hit the plateau. And in order to try and work out what's going to give them the confidence they're on the right path and they just need to see it through, or give them that extra stimulus or something, because I know that there is that the beginner gains, that sharp, steep incline of progress, and then boom, it's the plateau. And it's understanding the psychology. Maybe they need to go into, how do I break it down into smaller chunks to keep the momentum up whilst understanding that plateau is essential, and often you do see people drop off. It doesn't matter what you do. You could throw them into a little challenge. You could give them on. You could change the programming and things like that. But that you're going to have to intervene in some way. Otherwise, they will drift, and then they'll probably go to another trainer, do the same for 6 months, and then move to someone else.
Well, Pat Flynn has a good line he uses with his middle-aged clients and someone like myself. The plateau is the new personal record. So if I'm still, so at my next weightlifting meet, I want to clean and jerk 105. Are you guys kilos or pounds? What's easier?
Kilos.
Okay. So 105 is what I lifted in my first weightlifting meet back in 1974 or 75. So basically my career, I hope you heard those numbers, 74, 75. What I'm trying to do is get myself on a plateau from my first weightlifting meet. That's my goal right now, is to lift as much as I did 3 weeks after I saw the Olympic list for the first time, which is kind of funny to say. But I guess what we need to do, I do have a point here. I think that we need to, Leonard's book on mastery, which I think is genius, but we also have to learn to teach people that if you're plateauing every day after age 35, you're doing marvelously. If at age 35, if you're 9% body fat and you do this and this, and you hold on to that for 30 years, you're doing okay. And I think that's my other kind of knock on the influencers, is that there's always this trend, either less body fat, it's always this tug between body comp, and then this BS you see, I can do this and I can do this and I can do this. And I'm not a fan of that.
I just went last weekend, Dan, to the Royal Albert Hall in London, and they had this Strongman Classic on, which was like,
Oh yeah,
it's part of the qualifiers for the world's strongest man, and you had quite a few American athletes and Canadians there, and there's a guy there called Mark Felix, who's a British strongman, and Mark Felix is 56 years old now, and Strongman is on the TV every Christmas in England. It's kind of like a bit of a staple of the TV schedule at Christmas. And I've been watching it since I was a kid. And Mark Felix has been competing for, it's got to be 20 to 30 years in the world's strongest man. I think they call him, I can't remember what his nickname is, either the Miracle or the Myth or something like this, because he's 56 years old and he's still there every year. And they do this. It was a deadlift, an axle deadlift for reps, 360 kilos, and he's 56 years of age, and he's, I think he gets about four or five reps, and the winner's a Ukrainian guy called Novikov who got 7. But this guy's 56 years of age, and but he's just been there, and he just looks the same as he did 20 years ago.
He's still got the static hold record as well.
Yeah, he's got.
I saw you posted a picture of one of them 2 pillars.
Yeah, he does.
God knows how much they weigh.
Yeah, he does the Hercules hold, which is 2 huge pillars that are falling outwards, and you have a grip.
Yeah.
You hold it with static grip, and within the program on one of the pages, it had, because they say he's got the biggest hands in strongman. So his grip events, he can, and they had this program, which was, like a standard program size, and they had a real size hand of his on the page, and it's nearly the size of the program. You put your hand on it, and it's just like huge. But yeah, he's obviously been, because you can't keep getting better every decade, can you? He's been at that high level for like 20 or 30 years,
Oh shoot. Of course it's not there because I'm looking for it, but I've got a book called Winnett's book, Ageless Athletes. And the number one thing he discovered with people who have had 30, 40, 50-year careers in a sport, and it includes the book has Clarence Bass, the late Al Order, the great discus thrower, race walkers, all kinds of runners and stuff. All of them have to cycle through. You cannot. There's this idea. I'm not, as if you know my work, I'm no fan of linear periodization, but there's this idea, and here's why I hate linear periodization, is that it does this, but what happens when you get here? Well, that's when these coaches will tell you, take anabolics, take amphetamines, do this, do that, drug this, and to get yourself bounced back up. But life isn't linear. Life has these highs and lows. I was at a wedding. One of my assistant coach got married, and I was at a wedding in a place called Virginia, East Coast. And, in the wedding ceremony, better or worse, richer or poor, sickness and in health. And every time I hear that at a wedding, I think it actually makes me a better coach. And I actually mean that. This isn't me being philosophical. It's like, when I hear that phrase, it reminds me of that, riding high in April, shot down in May. And that's Frank Sinatra, the wedding. Everybody recognizes it until we get into our field. And all of a sudden it's like, well, if you get into my inner circle, then I'll give you the secrets. And I'll tell you what the secrets are of life. Buy low, sell high, drink water if you're thirsty, sleep if you're tired.
Don't eat yellow snow.
That's
one of my favorite ones. What you've just said there is brilliant, though, because the cycle of training is obviously, you like like we're all training with Paul McElroy, and he talks about training with it well within comfort, and and expanding your comfort zone without having to go anywhere near it, unless you're going to compete or whatever. If you're a normal bloke like we are,
tell him about sets of 15 on the back squat. That's not comfort zone.
No, but anyway, but it's it's staying within your comfort zone and not going anywhere near injury and all that sort of stuff. But obviously it gets heavy. It still gets heavy because it always does, right? But when it gets heavy, for me, it takes more time and other things fall by the wayside. But when you go back to the start of the cycle, everything feels easier. You get it done much faster, and then you've got more time to do everything else. And that's exactly what you've just said about life. And what we've talked about, the graphic equalizer or the levers James was talking about. You've got your family, your business, or your work, and then you've got training and then fun or whatever else. And this is in Pat's book, isn't it? Which I've referenced before as well, How to Be Good at Almost Everything, is short-term specialization on a thing. But if you can't do that forever because everything else drops down. And it's not spinning plates, but you can start to keep everything up there. But you keep it on a plateau while you're working on the other thing, don't you? And I just think that's brilliant. And the more people can realize that, then, you know, the easier things become when you can actually accept that. And that book, the Mastery book, is really good. A good explanation of that, I think.
And if you read Pat Flynn's book on generalism, which is brilliant, if you go to the end of the book, he describes the life of this person who has mastered so many different areas. It's me.
I was going to say it's David Bowie, in it, but no, it's the other one.
But when I was getting advanced degrees, I got advanced degrees. By the way, I still trained and even competed during my advanced degrees, but I also knew that I was going here in this area. And then you graduate, and I don't, you don't throw it out. I've always tried to do that. When I talk about the early aughts, the 2000, and especially after 9/11 here in the States, when, my daughters were going into middle school, and it was a tough time here in the States, a lot going on. And yet my biggest training insights came from post 9/11, my gym closing down, having just a schedule that I'd have to wake up early in the morning to work as a professor, administrate, when I woke up in the morning to work on my online class, I was also setting up the crock pot for dinner that night, and also making sure I was, on Monday, it was like cleaning, putting the white laundry in, because I would wash the clothes during the day and dry them when we got home at night. And all this stuff was going on at once. And those were the greatest insights of actual performance training came into my head. So there is value in short-term specialization, but there's also value in having a complex, complicated life, and where you use your intellect to overcome those, I hate to call them barriers, but those very important things that are also in your life. And I think, and that's why, every so often I'll be with somebody who is a famous athlete or a famous coach, and they don't, none of their relationships have ever really panned out. They don't have children. And when you go to their homes, very often they have a it's not a lifestyle I would want to have. There's not a lot of, I don't want to say, I don't know. There's not a lot of juice in their life outside their body or, something else. And to me, that's, it's Tony Robbins talks about the juice of life. I want to be a grape, not a raisin.
Isn't that one of the dangers of just of specialism and high levels of achievement, is that you do, for some people, they have to have that kind of blinkers on and they just have to focus on it. I mean, it's not to say it can't be done another way, but it's there's a lot of sacrifices that are made, and people are prepared to put those things to one side and maybe can never get them back.
Well, I have many friends. In fact, some of them are no longer with us, and some of them don't have long on the planet, who sacrificed everything for this dream. And the problem is, when you talk to somebody who's won the Olympics or medaled at the Olympics, or, there's that Peggy Lee song, is that all there is? And I think you have to be very careful in life, is that when you get, I got to tell you, if you do get yourself down to, you get the 8-pack abs and you're standing there with your 8-pack abs and you're doing your selfies with your 8-pack abs, stop for a minute and just say, okay, now why did I want 8-pack abs in the first place? And very often the guys will tell me, because I want to pick up chicks. And I always tell them, well, that's great. If you brushed your effing teeth and learned how to dance and talk to women like human persons rather than objects, you probably wouldn't need 8-pack abs. Ugly bastards like me do real well because
you got a dentist.
Because I have a lot of money, is actually extremely wealthy. Yes, I have.
There's a comedian. Who was it? There's a few people who've said it. I mean, it'll been said before, but there's a comedian over here, Frank Skinner. He's probably in his 60s now, but he's not the best looking bloke in the world and all of that sort of stuff. And he said, I think it was when he was in his 30s, he became famous, and he was like, all of a sudden I've become sort of like much more attractive overnight. It was just because he had more money.
Yes.
Well, Dan, I was going to ask you, if possible, you mentioned it earlier, and it kind of, you said about, the fact that you're at the age you're at now, and you're trying to kind of, I suppose, chronicle and systemize your knowledge so it's around for much longer than you maybe are physically, and I know that obviously since I've known you, I was thinking the other day, I think I first met you in 2012 in America, so it's kind of been a decade now. You've obviously now you've got the Dan John University, you've got the workout generator, you've got obviously everything's much more chronicled and ordered and and organized and things, all your kind of life's work, I suppose. And we did touch on, just before we started to record, this thing that went out as an email the other day, the possibility that you might actually be doing some online training and that sort of thing going forward. And I know you said you had some reticence around that, or some questions around that. I wonder if we could maybe touch on that before we kind of wrap up and stuff.
So I think it's a great idea. So by the way, so we have a bunch of people who work with me on the site. Brian, who is just amazing. Brian is the brains of it. Brian studied my work, God bless him, realized that Brian is the one who realized that my brain works like a spreadsheet, which is really weird because everyone thinks I'm just this, woohoo guy. They really do. But when you actually study my work, you'll realize I'm extremely if-then in my thinking. Once you listen to my work, in fact, even in this conversation today, we've had a lot of fun and a lot of laughs, but you'll listen that a lot of what I've been saying is if-then. If you choose to be a specialist and you throw all your chickens in that one basket, you better watch that basket very carefully, all your eggs in one basket. If you do that, then you have to do, you follow? So he figured out that between my 1, 2, 3, 4 assessment, my intervention programs, the way I look at the movement matrix, everything, it can be done if then. And so that where the workout generator came from. Well, and now we have a new young man named Ozzy who's helping us with just getting this is going to sound weird too, but somehow they think that a 65-year-old historian, theologian, discus thrower isn't good on social media. I'm like, what? And so Ozzy is taking over and we have other people. I work with the deaf community a lot, so it's really important that we have things. It's always important that we have those closed captions on the bottom. It's very important to me. So, but for me to coach online, besides the workout generator, besides this kind of stuff, I want it to be high. I want it to be high quality. And you see what I'm saying? So yes, I want to work with more people, especially if I can do it in a situation where I don't have to fly to, and I love, what's your town's name?
Chelmsford.
Chelmsford, home of radio or home of television. Which one is it?
Home of radio. Birthplace of radio.
Birthplace of radio. Yes. Birthplace of radio. Delightful Chelmsford. As much as I love Chelmsford, I got to tell you, the commute will kill me if I'm working with you 3 days a week. And of course, So I guess I'm trying to say, James, and I thanks for letting me plug this, but I want to do it, but it has to be done well. So one of the thoughts is to move away from 2 sets of 5, get your wrist underneath your thumb or, whatever, and move into more of this kind of mentoring kind of help, the more, and I think I'm in a place in my life where, I can still help you with your Olympic snatch technique and your kettlebell snatch technique, but why are you Olympic lifting? Why are you kettlebell sport? Why are you, and I think, so I think we're going to move ahead on it done well.
Excellent. So I think obviously for people who I get your weekly emails, your Wandering Weights emails, which always, I'm always amazed every week at how long does it take you to do that every week? Because some of the emails you send out are really in depth and they've got so much thought.
Hey, what did you think of this week's with all the superfoods and stuff?
Yeah, I have to say I've browsed through it. I haven't sat down and fully read it this week yet, but I saw that come up on my inbox. Yeah,
a couple of weeks ago, I had one of my favorite workouts called the Sparrow Hawk or the Spar Hawk. This week was I only provided 2 articles this week because I just ran down that road with the magic foods. I just kind of, so yeah, I love, but gentle listener, I love magic food lists. I don't know what it is about my brain. I just love the fact that this food is the best, and then they'll prove it why it's better than everything else. And okay. It takes me somewhere between, I would say, it'd be longer than that, but it has to be, piecing it together every week takes an hour to 2 hours. And then getting the information is anywhere from, probably an additional hour or 2. So probably 4 to 5 hours a week, probably, honestly.
I thought you were going to say takes like an hour or something to put it together, the email, and it's kind of taken about 45 years to get all the information together.
Well, you say that, and it's like, it's, I feel like, the old joke about the plumber.
Yeah.
That's I feel, for the general listener, it's the old joke. The hot water heat isn't working. They hire a plumber. He walks up and he takes a hammer and goes, boop, and it works perfectly. And the lady goes, how much would that be? He goes, 300 quid. Huh? See how I did this?
Hey.
And she goes, well, we're needing an itemized list, and so he goes, £1 for showing up and bringing out my hammer, $299 for knowing what to hit.
Yeah.
And there is some truth to that. Sometimes when I'm coaching the discus, someone will say, God, how do you pick up so quickly? And it's like, dude, I've seen a lot of discus throws. And I've seen a lot of people spin in the ring. I've seen a lot of people whip weights over their head. I've seen a lot of people miss this or miss that, or do this right or do that wrong. So it takes, it's weird because I've
started using, you said something on the last podcast about the discus throw, because I thought, we're going a bit off piste here, sorry, but I find this really interesting when I'm throwing a ball for my dog or a stick or anything. And you said about the thing, because I was thought you'd spin around and bring your arm with you and then it goes. But you said, no, you leave it behind and then you kind of you don't dislocate your shoulder or anything, but you just let it relax. And then your arm whips around afterwards and you get that whip effect. So I do that with sticks. And I've been chucking them for miles. Sean, my missus, was like, how do you do that? And I was like, Dan John taught me on the podcast.
So I don't teach that. So there's 600 muscles in the body, and I think that's a terrible way to teach muscles. I teach there's one muscle that's broken into 600 different compartments, okay? And they're all rubber bands. And if I can get you to think of lifting, throwing, running as you are a bunch of rubber bands, does that translate? Do you guys call it elastics?
Yeah, it translates. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I always worry if I'm saying something. But if you teach it that the whole body is just a set of rubber bands, and what we're going to try to do is orchestrate them to all snap at once, there's your Olympic champion.
Yep. Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
The downside is it takes decades to get yourself to snap them all at once. Yeah.
And also, most people's rubber bands have been left out in the cold for ages, and they've gone
in the sun on a cold sunny day, and they all snap. Yeah, actually, yeah. Okay.
Excellent. I was going to say before we wrap up, I made a little list actually before we came on of the things that I'd say probably the biggest things that I've taken from you over the last decade. It won't take very long. So it's a list, but
are you trying to say there's not many?
No, it's not.
That came out wrong.
In section them, but they're things that people may not necessarily think of initially. So, number one, flossing the teeth is something that I do every day, and that's 100% just from you, because it's not really, we don't have a big flossing culture in the UK, I don't think, in terms of teeth, but in America I know it's a lot bigger. But yeah, so those floss harps every single day. Fermented foods. More recently, I have a lot of sauerkraut and kimchi as a result of what you've taught. One of the biggest things I think is one of your I suppose you'd call it a mantra. Make a difference. You know, it's is one of your big ones, which you know I live with every day. Your 1, 2, 3, 4 assessment we use at Unique Results.
Yes, you do.
With members, which is fantastic. And I've also added into that the straight arm hang as well from the bar, because you do so you do the push up position plank for 2 minutes, and we try and get people to try the hang as well if they're able to do that. Then obviously your whole fundamental human movements of push, pull, hinge, squat, loaded carry, which like you said was something that you introduced, pioneered, popularized, made, no one was really doing before. So loaded carries is something that's absolutely huge. So, I think that knowing you for the last decade, as I have, all your books, the 5 times you've been on this podcast, the fact that I listen to your podcast every week. And like I think I said before we came on, you're probably the most referenced or mentioned person over the 100 episodes that we've had. So, I just wanted to just have a big thank you, really, Dan, for the impact that you've had on me and millions of other people around the world, I'm sure.
Thank you. And I'm sure my mother heard that, and thank you. Because that means more to me than you know.
Thank you. And I saw your post at your mum yesterday, actually. That was fantastic.
Yeah. Terrible picture. But no, and it's, I have some friends whose parent, I'll say to them, when's the last time you saw your mom? Oh, your mom's still alive. When's the last time? Oh, I talk to her every so often. I'm like, oh, dear God, what I would do to talk to my mom. It's, I know this. If my dad was still alive, and he died in 1991, but my dad would be in the back of his car, he would have cases of every one of my books. And every gas station he stopped in, he would lean in and go, "Hey, this is my son's book." I just know he would. I know he would. And I sadly, my dad never had a chance to read it. Well, he had a copy of my master's thesis and a couple of my articles, my early articles. But oh my God, my dad! Oh, you poor boy! You guys are lucky. My dad is no longer with us, because he'd be in Chelmsford right now, just talking about, he'd be yeah.
Oh dear.
So then, and I appreciate that more than you'll ever know. And thank you.
Thank you. Pete, anything you'd like to say in conclusion as we wrap up?
There's not a lot I can add to that, really, is there? Apart from the same sort of thing, but it's been done now, so it'll sound disingenuous. What's the
I
word?
think ingenuine.
You know what I mean? But
yeah.
no, I mean, well, what James has just done there is made a list. I didn't make a list, but I've just referenced a few things on this podcast and said I got that from you. So the mastery book, the chucking a stick for the dog so it'll go further, so it doesn't land on him when he gets there. It actually goes further than he's ran, which I realized was a thing when a stick landed on his head once, and I was like, "Oh, I probably shouldn't have done that." So you've prolonged his life for a start. So yeah, just lots of things. I mean, your matrix, the what do you call
matrix?
The movement matrix. Yeah, I mean that's just been with me for years, and I think about it all the time, and I reference it all the time, and I use it all the time. So, you know, you're kind of woven into the fabric of all this fitness stuff, basically. And like you say, people don't reference. I mean, I do put stuff out there, and I forget who it was. So I'll say this wasn't me, but I can't actually reference the person. You know what I mean? However, you know, a lot of the stuff comes from you, but then I'll say Dan John got this from Dan John said this, but he got it from somewhere else, because there's all this stuff out, isn't there? So no, it's you've just been very influential right from the start of my career in this industry, which is very young at the moment. So yeah, again, thank you.
Thank you.
Paul, anything you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Well, I think probably 100 episodes in, you know, one of the reasons to set it up is to explore people's experience, you know, and convey that experience to people. Maybe we never kind of come across some of these ideas, you know, and you know, right from the start, you know, Dan, you jumped on and did our podcast right in the early days, which gave us great, not only boost in people who are listening to us, but also gave us great confidence we're on the right track. Yeah. So really appreciate that, you know. I mean, what I hope anything that people take away from this podcast 100 episodes in now is that, you know, the perspectives out there are really interesting, and that the fitness isn't just about calories. It's not just about lifting weights. It is about experiencing life. And there's a lot of stories and there's a lot of narratives that you may be following that you know that aren't serving you. And there are other people who have experienced a wide range of different things and have stories to tell and have experience that they can pass on. And Dan, you know, you're one of those people. So thanks a lot for coming on again.
Well, thank you. And let me just say this, guys. Pat Flynn told me most podcasts only last 7 times. And then I started looking around on this thing I have on my phone, and it's absolutely true. They die. And what I think the gentle listeners need to know is that it's difficult to do a podcast. It's hard. Right here, we have 4 people on this podcast right now. We're in asynchronic time zones right now. I'm in it's morning here, and it's sneaking up on nighttime there, right? Yeah. And to get people to come on, it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of energy, and the fans need to listen. So on this 100th episode, I'd like to congratulate you all, because it's hard to do this. It's easy to do 1, it's easy to do 2, it's easy to do 3. It's like they used to say in sales, every idiot can sell 3 cars, because everybody's got a father-in-law, and a friend. But you only find out how good you are when you sell the 10th one and the 100th one. So congratulations. I think I speak for all the listeners that I should be on more often. So there.
Well, we will get you back on, Dan, for what's the next one? The last Crusade, I think.
Definitely. Now, the upside of that one will be, of course, I expect everyone to watch at least the first few minutes, because that's filmed here in Utah. The first section is filmed in Utah.
Okay. When it's the young Indiana
River
Jones
Phoenix, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the late River Phoenix. Yeah.
That's
all. In fact, it's of course, in Utah, when you talk to people in England, 4-hour drive seems like a long ways, but here that's only 4 hours away. I say only 4 hours. That's how you know I'm a Utah. That's only 4 hours away. So we'll do that, and I will and thinking of I also think Sean Connery's performance is brilliant in that show. I think it's one of the most well-crafted movies ever. When he says illumination to his son, it is just like, oh, that is exactly the journey of the intellect. I loved it. Okay, so I'm there for you. Okay.
Excellent, brilliant. So, guys, if you do want to follow, I mean, if you don't already, follow Dan, then I'd probably say Instagram @Coach Dan John. Go to the Dan John University. Is it .com?
.com.
danjohnuniversity.com. I'm a member on there. I'd highly recommend going on there and checking that out for the workout generator, for all of the articles, for all of the books, for everything on there. It is absolutely fantastic. And hopefully, Dan, at some stage when you're over in England again, we might be able to set up something else with us, another workshop or something. We'll try and sort something out.
You know what? I have 2 global upgrades on Delta, so I'd come in on Delta 1. So I am not going to say no to going to England for in the finest. The food is amazing. I sleep now. I'm yes. You pick a date, I'll be there. In fact, I might even bring family.
Yeah.
I would love.
We'll have to get the picture and get the updated picture of you with Bella and Xander again.
Oh my God, I love those photos. And the last time we had her holding me, right? Yeah.
It was great. Yeah, so that'd be fantastic. But thanks so much, Dan. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure having you on with us for episode 100. Please do, listeners, like, share, subscribe, follow. Leave a review if you're on a platform that allows you to leave one. Go onto the Facebook group, just search groups, Facebook, Health Oddity, and we'll let you in there. We'll be back next week for episode 101. And again, thank you, Dan, for joining us for this big episode 100.
And congrats to you guys. Great job.
Thank you. And thank you to all our listeners. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.
And I'll insert the fanfare there.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Oddity.